Man-made pollution has played a massive part in global climate change. Every country has its ways of tackling this problem. In Canada, the solution being used is called the carbon tax. The concept of the carbon tax was introduced in Canada in 2007 with the simple idea that if all fossil fuels are taxed and made expensive, surely people will use them less, which should result in lowering the overall carbon emission of the country. Because practically every good and service contributes to the country's carbon emission, the math behind the carbon tax is not simple. But it's estimated that for every ton of CO2 emitted, Canadians right now pay about $65 in carbon tax. And that's supposed to increase to $170 by 2030, and probably won't stop there as the government wants Canada to be net zero in emissions by 2050. The government has decided to tax a fossil fuel based on how bad it is for the environment. For example, the carbon tax on propane is about 10 cents a liter, 14 cents a liter on gas, and 17 cents a liter on the more harmful home heating oil. So charging these pennies here and there eventually adds up as the federal government collected over $8.2 billion in carbon tax just last year. I am sure that Canadians are not big fan of pollution and are willing to do their part to fight climate change. But how is their contribution of over $8 billion of hard-earned money being used? Well, about 90% of that money is used to pay for the climate action incentive payment. It is a tax-free amount given out to help offset the cost of the federal carbon tax. So the government just takes the money only to give it back to you next year. I don't know about you, but that doesn't seem like a productive way to tackle climate change. The amount of money you might get depends on where you live and how many people you have in the family. It is not based on how much fossil fuel you used or how much you paid in carbon tax. So those who use less fuel and pay less tax still get the same rebate as someone who burns a lot of fuel, which is not that fair financially. The remaining 10% of the $8.2 billion is used to support municipalities, schools, hospitals, and universities, as they also pay the tax, but don't get the private rebates, and that money is supposed to help them reduce their fossil fuel consumption. Okay, so we are collecting all this money, but does this thing even work? Well, not really. Take British Columbia, for example. They have had a carbon tax since 2008. So from their base year of 2007, gross greenhouse gas emissions in their province have reduced by 2.8% till 2021. That's a 2.8% reduction in 14 years. And don't forget there were lockdowns and restrictions in 2020 and 2021, which practically stopped the economy. So is a 0.2% drop every year worth all the time, money, and effort? This tax has been so controversial because of the politics and policies around this tax rather than its impact on the environment. Firstly, the annual increase. Countrywide carbon tax started in 2019 with people paying about $20 per ton of CO2 emissions. Things were relatively fine with the economy in 2019, but 2020 and 2021 were some of the hardest years for a lot of people financially. And that didn't stop the tax at all. It has now increased to $65 per ton and is set to increase by $15 every year till it reaches $170 a ton. Knowing what this money is doing and its impact on the environment, it's natural that Canadians are not happy with the increases which are coming on top of existing financial struggles of housing, unaffordability, highest inflation and interest rates seen in decades, and so on. And it's not like people can just switch to green energy in an instant. Firstly, it's not cheap to make your house run only on green energy. And secondly, even if people had the money, the hard Canadian winters don't make things easy. Green energy starts to become impractical when you don't get much sun, and winters can last for 6 months with temperatures dropping to -30 or even -40 degrees. Regardless of those problems, it's also the action taken by the government. Recently, Prime Minister Trudeau announced the ban on home heating oil across the country for 3 years. The point of this ban is to help families who haven't been able to switch to cleaner heating options. Remember, home heating oil is highly polluting and has a higher tax rate of 17 cents per liter, which might save people over $250. But I also find this theory very interesting. The current ruling party is the Liberals, which have had strong results in Atlantic Canada for a long time. But recently, their opposition, the Conservative Party of Canada, outperformed them in the polls. So as a counter, this Canada-wide pause was introduced on this one type of heating oil, which is mostly used by Atlantic Canadians. And suddenly, the Liberals are seeing an improvement in poll numbers. I am not someone who looks into politics, but one thing I guess we can agree on is that this creates a bit of favoritism from one part of Canada to another and creates a bigger divide between the people and the federal government. How have you been impacted by this carbon tax? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.